This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
It's an odd person who's willing to put their life on the line for another, who they don't even know, and who may not even want them there. It's a life of sacrifice. It's a life of selflessness. It's a life of suffering. You walk out the door one morning and an unusual or extraordinary event happens. You come home, if you're lucky enough to come home at all, another entirely different person. A person who your family and friends don't recognize anymore. You're injured, although no wound is visible. You're in pain, but you're not sure where. You've changed, but you're not sure how. You're left to deal with this overwhelming darkness all alone. Or so you think. But there are others. And yes, we can help. Because none of us are as strong as all of us. I'm Kevin Donaldson, always here with Mike Failace, and welcome to the Suffering Podcast. If you're a fan of overcoming adversity and overcoming suffering, then we're for you, because that's what we do here and that's the stories that we highlight. So do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, please comment, ring the bell so you can get notified of all of our new content, and now you can join. Follow us on all social media so you can find out exactly what we're up to. Before we get into anything, let's throw a big shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. We don't trust anybody as police officers, but we do trust them. So go to toyotahackensack.com. And while you're at it, go to 234 Franklin Avenue in Nutley. Go see Gus at Cubita Cafe. Some of the most delicious food. I was just there. I brought my whole family over there. And here's the best advertisement I can give. My 14-year-old son sat down there and had one of the sloppy Cubans. And he's about to graduate 8th grade, and he says, "Hey, Dad, after we graduate, can you take me to lunch here?" That's what this place does. Most delicious food, family, and like Gus says, he's not in the food business, he's in the people business. So go to 234 Franklin Avenue in Nutley. Go see Gus at Cubita Cafe. On this episode of the Suffering Podcast, we share a battle, the suffering of PTSD. I'm joined with my brother, retired Lieutenant Mike Failace. Mike and I first met some 25 years ago, believe it or not. I used to work with his brother, but then in reality, we really met about 6 years ago. Mike, thanks for coming in today. I really do appreciate it. Like I said, you are one of my brothers, and I'm so happy you're here today.
No, it's a pleasure to be here.
You're retired Lieutenant Mike Failace. Why don't you give the Suffering Podcast audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, I was born and raised in a small town in North Arlington, Lower Bergen County. Started my law enforcement career in 1996. Was hired by the Bergen County Sheriff's Department as an investigator. Did about 3.5 years there, went through various positions. I was in the court system. I was in civil process division, violation of probation warrant squad. In August of 99, I got a call from Lyndhurst Police Department. I started my career at Lyndhurst Police Department August 9th, 1999. Started off in the patrol division. Then a couple of years, I got promoted to detective. About 10 years or so after that, I got promoted to sergeant. Put back in the patrol division. Ultimately, I got promoted to lieutenant, which is the rank I retired at.
What motivated you to become a police officer?
You know, my whole life has been, I've been doubted my whole life. A lot of that is what drives me. I had two goals in my life. One was to be a professional football player. Then I realized I was too short, too slow. And my other dream was to become a police officer. I had an uncle who was a police officer in Port Authority Police, and I always saw him in uniform and everything. And it just really, I was attracted to the uniform and the way he presented himself. He's a very professional guy. He was a captain. He ran their police academy, squared away guy. And I always kind of wanted to model myself after him. But like I said, I mean, everybody doubted me my whole life. Playing football my whole life, being one of the better athletes in a small town like North Arlington, I wanted to better myself. So I went to Seton Hall Prep to play football because that was a premier football program in the state. And people doubted me. You'll never make it there. I had friends' fathers come up to me and say, "Oh, you think you're better than everybody. You'll never make it." One kid's father came up to me and said, "Oh, I'll see you at North Arlington High School next year." So I always use that as motivation in my life. So like I said, my life is, I've always been an underdog. I've always been too short to do this, too stupid to do that. You know, I wasn't the greatest student in the world. Like I said, I've been doubted, and I always tried to prove the doubters wrong.
Well, it's very few people in this world that actually start off on top of that mountain and then become great or have that greatness in them, it's always the underdog that starts.
Life is a gradual climb.
That's right.
We're not born on the top of the mountain. You got to get to the top of the mountain.
Would have been nice. I would have liked to seen how the other half lives, but
I'd love to be on the top of the mountain, look down at everybody every day. But
you just say you don't ever start at the top of the mountain, and you went through this incredibly traumatic experience after you reached your goal of becoming a police officer. Let's talk about your traumatic experience, because you were involved in a shooting, correct?
That's correct.
Let's get into your shooting.
It was September 15th, 2014. It was we were working the midnight shift. It was 1900 to 0700.
Everybody remembers the exact date of their shooting or traumatic incident.
End time. So we just get past midnight. So it was actually September 16th. It was a Monday night into Tuesday morning. There was really not much going on.
Always starts out a slow night. Mine did too. It started out a slow night. It sucked.
They had, we had Monday Night Football. After 2:00, once the bars cleared out, make sure everybody got home. Or we had a couple arrests that night. One of our guys had a drug arrest, so we had some people in headquarters. And being a supervisor, I have to do all the processing and all that. It was a little after 2 a.m. We get a bolo overspend.
Bolo, for those of you out there, is be on the lookout for.
2 people were trying to break into a car. They were trying to break into a Nissan in North Arlington, which is one town south of us. The lady had cameras on her house, and she actually saw them breaking into her car, so she went running out in her pajamas and scared the people away. They jumped into a black SUV. North Arlington gave the bolo. I was in headquarters at that point. One of our guys picks up the car. He sees this black SUV traveling through our town. Attempts to pull him over. They take off from him. So I come running out of headquarters. He's chasing them down Ridge Road, going northbound, which is the main road in our town. And as you come up the Ridge Road, it intersects with Route 3. Route 3, either way, you take Route 3 east, it'll take you to the Turnpike, it'll take you to New York City. Route 3 west, it'll take you to 21, it'll take you to 46. 21 runs from Patterson to Newark. So as he's pursuing the car, come running out of headquarters, I get in my car. I head up towards Ridge Road, and guy's giving updates where he's at, and I'm trying to find him. And so I get towards Route 3, because generally they'll jump onto Route 3 and hit one of the local highways. And, you could hit 17 from there, or like I said, 21, 46.
If you've been on the job long enough, you kind of know, you have a little bit of an idea of where they're going.
Yeah.
So you can sort of anticipate what their next move is. It's not very easy to do, but that comes with time.
Like you said, doing it long enough, I kind of figured the people weren't from the area. They were either from one of the inner cities, I guess you could say. And 21 brings you to those cities. So as he's pursuing them northbound on Ridge Road, I kept asking him for updates. At one point, he said he lost them. So at that point, I had jumped onto Route 3 already. I said to him, "Do you have any further description?" He said, "I got a plate." Pretty good. Pursuing a guy and getting a plate. That never happens.
Unfortunately, that plate's never going to come back to the registered owner.
Hotel Yankee 8170.
That's pretty good.
It was carjacked at gunpoint out of Newark earlier in that day. So I make the turnaround. I'm coming back into town. The guys never. We thought they jumped on Route 3. What happened is they hit one of the side roads and got lost, and they wound up making it back into Lyndhurst again. So as I'm coming back into town, another one of our guys picks up the car. So they take off from him, and he's giving out directions. And I'll never forget, he sees a car going to one of our county parks, which are closed after dark. He asks if that's one of our cars in the park, because it goes deep into the park, and he couldn't see it. He just saw a black SUV going through there, and we had a lot of black SUVs. He comes out. My guy was sitting right at the exit to the park. Guy cuts right in front of him. Pursuit's on again. They make it through a couple different streets in town. They make it back up to Ridge Road, which was the initial avenue of pursuit. Now they're coming northbound. I'm coming off of Route 3. I make a right-hand turn. I'm coming southbound. And now at this point, it's 2:25 in the morning.
Which is a good thing, because there's
There's nobody on the road. That's why we continued the pursuit, because he was driving erratically. He was doing 90 miles an hour.
Now I want to stop you right here for a minute, because I want to find out, at this point, if you can recall, this is some time ago, you have certain details that should be hot buttons for you. You have a carjacked vehicle, which means it's a violent event. You have at gunpoint. So you know that this is game on. This is a little bit more serious than a regular stolen car, which hey, stolen cars are more sport than anything else. Now you have somebody that's involved in a violent act.
You know they're coming to play.
They're coming to play. So what's going through your head? How are you prepping? How are you wargaming for a possible end game?
There's a lot of things that go through your mind all at once. You know, I'm on the SWAT team. I'm a submachine gun operator on a SWAT team, and they allowed us to carry our long guns in the car. I'm sitting there deciding to myself, should I unstrap the long gun? You know, should I get that ready? Should I just go with my handgun? You know, if God forbid it comes to that.
Mind you, this is all happening within 2 seconds.
Well, without a doubt.
Yeah, you have to go through all these different scenarios in your head.
It feels like an hour.
Correct.
But it's going on. I mean, the whole pursuit lasted not even 5 minutes. Like I said, our guy's pursuing them northbound. I'm coming southbound. And I'm only doing about 25 miles an hour. I can't, you know, because it's the only thing I could see up in the distance is my guy's overhead lights. Because the other guy, the SUV had turned out his headlights. He blacked out. And I'm trying to gauge the distance, like where he's at, you know, how far away he is. And I'm just fixated on my guy's overhead lights. And I don't see any other cars on the road. Like I said, it was dark out. They were in a dark SUV, no headlights. I was waiting for him to cut down one of the side streets. I guess I had tunnel vision, so I'm just staring at that. When I looked back down at the road, the SUV was in my lane of travel coming at me head on 90 miles an hour. I'm only doing about 25. He's coming at me head on 90 miles an hour. I swerve to get out of the way. He swerves to get out of the way.
Can you still smell the burning of the engine? One of the things that people don't realize is when you're in a pursuit, you're hypersensitive to all these different feelings. Your adrenaline's rushing. But every pursuit I've ever been in, there's that same burning engine smell coming off the vehicle in question.
I could even remember the roar of the engine going past me. So as I swerve out of the way, he swerves out of the way. He loses control of the car. How he held control of his car, I have no idea. It was just swaying from curb line to curb line. And this is a wide street. The car was just going out of control. So he passes me. Pursuing car passes me. I make a U-turn, and I start going after them. The suspect vehicle hits a construction sand barrel right over Route 3. As he hit the sand barrel, the car turned sideways a little bit. It's 2:28 in the morning. So we had cops coming from all over the place. I mean, there was Clifton cops there. There was Nutley cops there. You know, they all wanted to join in, you know.
But thankfully, you get that help from those surrounding towns, because when you really need it, they're there.
Yeah. Rutherford borders us. So there was a Rutherford car sitting right on the border. And Route 3 actually is where Rutherford starts. So the car hits the sand barrel. Rutherford car just happened to be sitting waiting for them. After the suspect crashes into the sand barrel, Rutherford car pulls right in behind him to try to block him in. The driver at this point puts the car in reverse, starts ramming into the Rutherford car. All the while, the wheels are spinning. Road's filling up with smoke, and you were saying the different smells and senses you remember. The road's filling up with smoke. I could still smell the smell of burning rubber. It's like ingrained in my senses now.
And every time you smell it hereafter, you're there.
It brings you right back.
Yep.
As the wheels are spinning, the road's filling up with smoke. We can't really see all that well. We go up to the car, guns drawn. He's backed up into the Rutherford unit, and we're yelling, you know, show me your hands, show me your hands, show me your hands. He's got the car in reverse, and I'll never forget it. Another thing that's ingrained in your memory. He had his left hand on the steering wheel. I came up on the passenger side. He was reaching down between the passenger seat, staring me right in the face. I mean, I remember his face to this day. It's like one of those things that are just ingrained in your memory that I could never get rid of. He's backed into the car. Tires are spinning. The tire's breaking up. I had burned rubber from the top of my head all the way down the left side of my uniform. We're drawing down on him. Show me your hands. Show me your hands. Pulls his hand up in it like a jerking motion. At that point, we started firing on him. Fired right through the passenger side window. That's one of the tough things that people don't realize. From 5 feet away, I saw a bullet go right in the guy's forehead. I saw his forehead just open up, and his whole body just went limp.
Slow motion, too.
Yeah. And as his body went limp, he pressed down on the gas. The gas was floored. Now the tires are spinning out of control. At one point, I recall seeing a key in the ignition. So I'm thinking to myself, I have to shut this car off somehow. I'm thinking it's going to be spinning, maybe push the Rutherford car out of the way. And Thought it would jump over the overpass and land onto Route 3. So I'm thinking, I got to shut this car off somehow. I take out I don't recall what I did with my gun. I guess I reholstered. I took out my expandable baton.
You're one of the only people I've ever heard that used an expandable baton.
Yeah.
But they're always to break
I'm
windows.
old school. Yeah. So I take it, I break and rake the window, and I go to reach in to hit the ignition, try to shut it off. Passenger popped up right in my face. Never even knew there was a passenger in the car.
Damn.
He was right. If he had a gun, I was gone. I was long gone.
You get that tunnel vision. Don't they tell you in the academy? Don't get
fixated on a driver.
But hey, listen, we're sitting here, we're Monday morning quarterbacking the whole thing, and it's easy to say that, but when it's game on, it's a whole different story.
Passenger pops up in my face. Again, I don't know what I did with my baton at that point. I drew down on the passenger, and I said, let me see your hands. I said, you're going to get the same thing. Let me see your hands. His hands just came up, and I mean, he was compliant at that time. We carry ballistic shields in our cars. So one of the guys who happened to respond right after the shooting was coming out with a ballistic shield. So I told him, hold down on the passenger. Because the old saying in law enforcement, if there's one, there's two. If there's two, there's 10. So we couldn't see, the windows were all tinted out, so we couldn't see in the car. So I didn't know if there was, 5 people in there, 6 people in there. I had no clue. So he held down on the passenger window. I said, I ran around the car like a fireman, breaking windows, just breaking it. You know how firemen, God bless firemen, they run into places that we run out of.
Yeah, but they like to turn on their lights and break windows. That's what they do.
Windows, go through red lights and all that stuff. So I break and rake all the windows on the side, and then we clear out the whole car. At that point, now the tire's spinning out of control. The tire blows out. Now it's metal on ground. Now we're getting just the sparks coming up at us. So I'm shielding my eyes, and I take my baton, and I'm trying to open the door handle to get this guy out. Murphy's Law, door handle breaks right off. Now, what else could go wrong at this point? I don't recall if I shut the car off before we got him out. But what we had to do is drag him out the passenger side window. We got him out. He got out without a scratch on him.
He's very lucky, too, because you got a lot of cops around there with their adrenaline through the roof.
There was guns drawn everywhere.
He's probably got some gunpowder in his ears.
Well, like I said, we fired right across him. Going back to it real quick, I reach in, I wound up shutting off the car, and, so scene was safe at that point. 30 seconds to 40 to 45 seconds after the incident was over, state police hear it, and you know them, they love them to death. They want to get involved in it. We had troopers coming from the turnpike. We had troopers coming from the parkway. We had troopers coming from everywhere. State trooper comes pulling up off of Route 3. He gets out of the car with a shotgun. He comes running onto the scene. Now, at this point, the car was still bucking back and forth. We hadn't shut it off at that point. Trooper comes running up, goes up. The car's bucking back and forth. He can't see with all the smoke. He decides to blow about 4 or 5 shotgun rounds into the car. All the cops are reholstered at that point, just standing there.
Here's that fine line between being a police officer and being somebody who's about to not be a police officer. He blew off all those rounds. He could have, A, killed an innocent person, B, killed another officer on scene. It's just a bad situation.
You learn about it in the academy all the time, your different angles and your crossfire and everything else. We couldn't see anything. Matter of fact, the Rutherford unit that pulled behind the car to block him in, that officer got out and he went around to the driver's side. We never knew he was over there. We couldn't see him. We couldn't see anything. Thank God we were accurate with our shots, or, we could have hit that officer.
I know you've told that story so many different times through, grand jury, to the prosecutor's office, to your department, to family and friends. I know it's real tough for you. I appreciate you telling that story. When I told my shooting story on here, it broke me up. But I'm going to be honest with you, I felt better when it was done. It was almost like a release. It had been so long since I told that. But I didn't forget one little detail. It doesn't sound like you did either. I
remember all the details. Well, I can't say all, but I remember most of the details. But the timeline is kind of skewed a little bit. I don't know if it happened at this point or that point. Like I said, I don't know if we got the passenger out before we shut the car off. I don't know if we got him out after we shut the car off.
Now, what year did this happen again?
2014.
And when's the last time you told that story?
Probably about a year ago.
A year ago. So how have you changed? Like I said in the beginning, you go to work one way, something happens, you come home a different person. How's your life changed? How have you changed as a person because of what happened? And we're going to get into the different steps of what happened. But tell me, Mike Failace went to work this day, came home from work this day. How are you different?
I'm a big quote person. I like to go online and look up quotes and stuff like that. And I saw one quote that really touched me. It says, "They say I changed a lot, but I say a lot changed me." So I did change, but there's a reason that I changed. That incident changed me. Yes, I did change, but something changed me. I would say life will never be the same again. You come to realize it's just going to be a new normal. You have your bouts with anxiety, stress, anger, irritability, depression.
Who did you have to lean on around this time? I'm assuming your circle has grown. Actually, I know for a fact your circle has grown.
Exponentially.
But right after the incident, who did you have to lean on?
Right after the incident, I mean, without getting into specifics, I didn't have a close group.
Nor did you probably think you needed.
No.
You're a strong guy.
Being a tough, badass cop. I used to hear about people going to see these different doctors and everything. I'm like, what the hell do you need that for? Come on, you're a cop.
That's why I don't fault people for having any type of negative reaction to my incident, because I'm on the other side now, and I understand that prior to the shooting, it's not that I would have thought they were weak, but I just would have thought, hey, that's not for me.
Yeah.
But now that I've gone through something like that, it's a little bit different.
I used to hear about cops being involved in shootings and they retired after it. And back in the day, like I said, when I was Joe Macho Cop, I'm like, oh, come on. Isn't that what you signed up for? There was always that chance of it happening. And, you see people retiring because of shootings. I feel terrible about it now, but I prejudged them before I knew what they were actually going through.
And that's why I don't hold anything against anybody. They're prejudging me, and that's fine. And I honestly hope these people who prejudge me never have to go through what I went through.
People say, oh, you're retired. It's like hitting a lottery.
Yeah.
Well, come live my lottery.
Yeah.
Come from my sleepless nights. In the beginning, it was terrible. Like I said, the picture of the guys that I have ingrained in my memory is him staring me right in the face, seeing his forehead open up. It's something that no sane person should have to see any time in their life. And for years, and it still happens a lot, it's the last thing I see when I put my head on a pillow at night. And a lot of times it's the first thing I see when I wake up in the morning.
The key component to any law enforcement officer being the best version of themselves is through education. Sherrie Allsup is a leader in providing that education to police agencies, preparing them for the all too frequent dealings with sexual assault victims.
You've seen Sherrie on episode 169 of the Suffering Podcast. She survived incest and almost daily sexual assault, so she comes from a place of experience and true understanding.
Sherrie has the intelligence, commitment, and compassion to open the eyes of those on the front lines, while providing the tools to effectively deal with a difficult situation. Sherrie's instruction comes from experience and multiple certifications.
Training with Sherrie will offer on-site training, customized schedules, specialized instruction tailored from a victim's perspective.
You are going to hear Sherrie's heart-wrenching but inspiring survivor story. Learn proprietary trauma-informed training techniques, uncovered victim-centered interview methods while earning continuing education credits according to your state guidelines. To be the best, you must learn from the best. Let Sherrie also guide you through the delicate cases of sexual assault from a victim's point of view.
Be a source of comfort to those victims affected by these traumatic experiences while producing a solid investigation and uncovering details that often go unnoticed.
To find out more or to contact Sherrie Allsup, go to sherrieallsup.com. That's SherrieAllsup.com.
Thankfully, in my incident, in my shooting, the guy didn't die. And I don't want anybody to die, even if somebody who tried to kill me. I forgave him, openly forgave him, because I understand that he's not coming after me. It was part of my process, part of my recovery process. He's not coming after me. He's coming after the
uniform, absolutely.
And the guy who, unfortunate to lose their life, but if it's his life or your life, he loses.
Absolutely.
Every day of the week. So we're talking a lot about PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. you have all the telltale symptoms. You've retired now. I know you've been diagnosed with PTSD. What do you think PTSD, if you had to tell somebody coming in fresh, how would you define PTSD?
I've heard people say PTSD stands for please take some drugs, which is comical in itself. Like I said, PTSD to me it's just a new normal. It's not knowing what your attitude's going to be at any given moment. It's like flipping a switch. I mean, you could be in a great mood one moment, and then, we talk about it all the time, triggers. Something will trigger you. And you just get into that mood where you get very irritable. You get angry at things. You snap at things. There are times where, and I regret it today, I'd snap at my kids for the smallest thing.
Your normal responses to things that should trigger you, or at least mine are different. And I'll give you a perfect example. Like if my kid does something that just irritates me, I'll snap.
Yeah.
I'll snap. It's better now than it was when after the incident initially happened. It was awful.
Terrible.
But then there's those incidents that really should upset me that don't. I'll give you an example. My father just died. He died, 2 weeks ago? I was like, okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's deal with it. And that was it. That was it. It almost feels like my emotions are a little bit out of whack.
It's an emotional roller coaster, and that's one of the other things with emotions too. I mean, there's some things that you should get emotional about and you don't. I'll be sitting at home and see a commercial on TV and I'll start tearing up. It's like, where's this coming from?
I have to walk out on certain movies.
Oh, yeah.
My son and I were just watching Lone Survivor, and we've both seen it before. And there's that scene, and I could tell you the exact scene where the guy playing Matthew Axelson looks at him and he goes, if I die here today, it still gives me chills. Tell my wife that I died on this hill with my brothers. And it just, I don't want my son to see me break down like that. I have to walk out of the room. Yeah. Here's these two tough guys here. They were talking about bawling, crying, but this is a good thing.
Yeah.
This is a good thing because PTSD is nothing new.
No.
This has been around forever. They used to call it shell shock, battle fatigue. Yeah. My Uncle Duke he was prisoner of war for 27 months in Germany during World War II. He came home. Then he re-enlisted and went to Korea. I mean, this is an amazing guy. Yeah. But growing up, he was never married. He was a huge drunk. All he did was go into bars and fight. And that's what I was told growing up. Uncle Duke, he's just a drunk. No, he wasn't a drunk. He was fucked up.
Yeah, PTSD.
He had PTSD, he had classic PTSD that this poor guy had to live with for his whole life. Now we have this tool where we can help these people, but there's still this negative stigma.
Yeah, without doubt.
You're not weak for admitting that there's something going on that's not normal.
Like you said, I mean, PTSD is more prevalent today. I mean, back in the day, they really didn't acknowledge it. I said, it's like, when you're going to grammar school and you always had that one kid that was the problem child, and they always say, oh, yeah, that kid's just a problem. He had something wrong with him.
Correct.
It was undiagnosed. Like you said before, not all wounds are visible.
Correct.
Maybe the kid was bipolar.
Well, do you think it's overdiagnosed now? I've heard I got PTSD, and they throw it out there as almost like this catch-all. It's almost offensive to me.
Yeah, without doubt. I mean, it's like the in vogue thing to say now. It's like, oh, yeah, I got PTSD. I got PTSD. I saw a car accident. Now I got PTSD. You can get it. Don't get me wrong. And anything could set you off. Any kind of traumatic thing. I mean, like I said, in my career, any cop has seen more than they should see.
Well, I look at your incident, what you just told, and if I could pick out one particular facet of what you said that gave you PTSD, it fits into my definition of PTSD. My definition of PTSD is going through a traumatic event, knowing, not feeling, knowing you're going to die and not dying.
Yeah.
When that kid popped up from that passenger seat and you're looking face to face at him, that is the incident to me where something snapped.
Yeah.
Not to say the other stuff wasn't horrible, but that was the point where, holy shit, I could die.
Yeah.
As cops, we have these weird coping mechanisms. After the shooting, what's your coping mechanisms?
I mean, they kind of varied a little bit at first, which most cops do. You tend to lean towards alcohol a little bit more.
Mike and I have had private discussions about this, and the one thing I warn him about is don't ever drink too much where you got to go away.
Yeah.
I went away, and it sucks.
I was sleeping for 2 or 3 hours at a clip. You wake up in a cold sweat from nightmares. You wake up so sweaty you don't even know if you pissed yourself.
You're looking for that one thing that's just going to give you a little peace.
So I'd get up and, I was staying in my basement at that point because I was having real bad night tremors and waking up sometimes just jump out of bed and yell. So I didn't want to bother my family at that point. So I was sleeping in my basement. And, it's a finished basement. It's livable. It's got a TV and a refrigerator. And, I'd lay down at 9 o'clock every night just so I could actually get some sleep. I'd sleep for 2 hours, wake up at 11. Go to the refrigerator, have a beer.
Couple Klonopin?
I never took I was prescribed Xanax at one point. I would only take them. I wouldn't take them during the day. I'd take them, if I had a problem falling asleep. I gave myself like about an hour a window to fall asleep. If I didn't fall asleep in an hour, I'd take a Xanax. But I just didn't like the way they made me feel.
But then you get into those unhealthy things where you're leaning more on that alcohol.
Exactly.
In order to have some sort of normalcy or to dull the pain. And I just mentioned Klonopin. So when anybody goes through traumatic incidents and they have what they think to be PTSD, there's medication that they prescribe you. And it's usually some sort of antidepressant and a Klonopin, which is an anti-anxiety. They give it to you freely. You take a couple Klonopin, you kind of dulls everything, kind of calms you down. Then you take a couple drinks of alcohol, which you're not supposed to do. All of a sudden, you become a real cheap date.
I thought that's what you had to wash Klonopin down with.
Yes, I think it says it on the bottle. Now, all of a sudden, you're a real cheap date because where it would take you 5 drinks to get a little dull, now it only takes you 1 or 2 drinks. So you're thinking, hey, great, this isn't bad, but it's incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, that's a slippery slope.
Yeah, but I also believe that a lot of medications, they've proven that these antidepressants are only about 20% effective, so a lot of it is a placebo effect. And hey, whatever works.
Yeah, it works.
That's fine. So I have a problem with this just massive prescribing of, rather than dealing with the issues, you're actually just dulling the issues.
It may even be like putting off the issue.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, I'll be good for now.
It's going to hit later on.
But it's going to hit again later on.
And then you become dependent on that.
You become dependent on that, and, you don't want those feelings anymore. And like I said, the one saying is, I hate remembering things that I don't want to remember.
But then you have this, and I'm sure you had this prior to the shooting, police officers are notorious for their dark sense of humor. I mean, we say stuff. I can say stuff about Mike, and Mike can say stuff about me that a normal person, I'd knock him down for doing it. But that's how we relate to this stuff. I was sitting in an autopsy once, and it was a crash, elderly couple. I had done my investigation. I knew they were at Costco. They just had lunch at Costco. I told you what they had. Doctor comes in, he goes, what happened? She asked him to go to Walmart. And that's the sick sense of humor. You're sitting looking at these 2 dead bodies, and I wasn't offended. I got it. I said, yeah, I don't know. Maybe, I laughed at it. But that's how you cope with these things. Do you still have that sick sense of humor? Is that still a coping mechanism?
Absolutely. I mean, thank God nobody could see the texts that go back and forth between our group. That's just a real sick sense of humor.
A lot of times I just shake my head and I end up typing something back, and I'm like, wow, no, man, listen, I'm still a government employee.
Delete.
Yeah. If anybody ever read this, I'm going away for a while. But it's all in good fun, and it's all a coping mechanism.
One of my coping mechanisms was, I'm a PTC certified police conditioning instructor. I got certified as a personal trainer. So I tell people all the time, you got to get to your comfort zone. Once you're out of your element when you're feeling like that, it's a terrible place to be. One of my comfort zones was the gym. Like I said, I was a personal trainer. I'm a conditioning instructor, all that stuff. So that was one of my comfort zones. In the beginning, I was I was just waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'd go to the gym.
But that's good you were still able to have that discipline, because that's something I lost.
Then I'd come home. I'd take my son was still young back then. I'd take him to school. I'd go back to the gym. Come home, eat lunch, take a nap. Had nothing to do. I'd go back to the gym. I was going to the gym 3 times a day. I was in fantastic shape, don't get me wrong. Of course, me being the stubborn Italian I am, I overdid it and tore my rotator cuff. And the doctor told me, After I tore my rotator cuff, he said, I don't want you to move it. I don't want you to do anything. He said, just get like movement with your arm back and forth. So me being the idiot I am, I said, that looks like running movement. So I went out and put a lanyard around my neck, held on to the lanyard. I went running like 2 days after surgery. Needless to say, I retore the rotator cuff. When I went back to the doctor after he called me an asshole about 10 times, they did surgery again.
But that's the type of person that becomes a cop.
Yeah.
I had a knee surgery in college for football. You know what I did 4 weeks after knee surgery? Jumped out of an airplane. The trainer always used to say that's how I got range of motion back. But that's the mentality. Those are the people that become police officers. Like, you're not stopping me.
Yep.
No matter how bad it hurts. Going back to the shooting, though, that night, because you have some distance from it, you think you would have done. We live in a world of Monday morning quarterbacks. And I'm not trying to Monday morning quarterback, but since you have a little bit of distance, is there anything that you would have done differently?
Like we said, the sixth sense of humor that we have, I always tell people I should have made a left and not a right because I wouldn't have been involved in the whole incident itself. The incident itself, I wouldn't, there isn't a thing I would change about it. I did exactly what I was trained to do, what I was paid to do, what I was expected to do.
That's good, though. That means you did everything with a clear heart. That means a lot.
That's how I put my head on the pillow every night. I did what the township residents are paying me to do, what they expect me to do.
Correct.
I was very well prepared for it. Like I said, being on a SWAT team, we were very proficient in firearms. We did a lot of training. There are some some cops that I know that aren't that proficient. I'm glad they weren't there that night.
Getting to that point right there, I get these messages from social media, and I pick one out, and I picked one out last night to read on air, and I really want to hear your commentary because it goes to what you just said right there. It comes from Eddie. It's how do you overcome the current negative view of police officers? In everything in life, there are good people and there are bad people. There's good doctors, bad doctors. Just like police officers, there's good police officers, there's bad police officers. I look back to this thing that happened in Minnesota with George Floyd. There is not one person, cop or civilian, who thinks that what that guy did was correct.
Exactly.
But everybody's being judged on that one man.
Yep.
And it hurts me because I almost died for this profession, for people I don't know. And all of a sudden I'm lumped in with this piece of shit. Eddie, listen to what Mike just said. There's cops that are proficient and there's certain cops that are not proficient. But you can't lump them all together.
There's bad apples and everything. And a lot of it to me has to do with media sensationalism. I've done, and not blowing smoke up my ass, I've done a lot of positive things in my career between CPR saves and running into burning houses. And when I tell you, and I don't like fire. I really
That's
don't
why
like
I became a cop.
Yeah, exactly. Let the firemen go in.
Let the firemen go in there. That stuff's hot. Is this your proudest moment as a police officer?
That's one of them. I have a lot of proud moments in it, and they're not like the regular like incident, proud of an incident. I mean, I was proud to put a uniform on every day. Loved wearing a uniform. I loved, as corny as it sounded, I loved protecting and serving. I loved.
You walk out of that house and you made a difference.
Just had that feeling.
Yeah.
Like I'm doing something positive. I mean, one of the greatest things in my career weren't necessarily on like a specific call. If I'm driving down the street and I see a couple kids outside, in a marked unit, and I see a couple kids outside throwing a football around, I pull the car over to the side, throw the football around with them for a little while. Let them know that cops are people too.
Correct.
And getting back in the car and the kids waving to me and thanking me for playing them, that was a proud moment for me. That's showing them what law enforcement is all about and what it should be about. Like you said, not the other incidents we were just talking about, kneeling on someone's throat and look at me, I'm a hero. To me, it was helping people.
Right.
One of my proudest moments, you're going to get a kick out of this. When this pandemic started, I worked 2 other jobs now, 2 part-time jobs. And when the pandemic started, they both kind of dried up a little bit. And I mean, I was still getting paid for one of them, but the other was an hourly job and had a lot of time on my hands. So a friend of mine owns a pizzeria, and I just happened to go in there for lunch one day because I was just bored out of my mind. So I'm talking to him, and I'm sitting down eating some lunch, and he says to me, I can't get dependable delivery guys. I'll deliver pizza for you.
You mean you're not too good to be a delivery guy?
Listen, do anything for $1. I don't care. Well, almost anything.
$20 is $20, bro.
So I started delivering pizza for him. I'm helping him out. He's helping me out. It's all good. Backtrack a couple of years ago. Obviously, before the shooting, I was still working. We were working a midnight shift. We get a call to this one address. 43-year-old female having a heart attack. So we go in there, and here she is. Looks primarily healthy, but she's having a heart attack. She's laying on a couch, not breathing. We rip her off the couch.
Surprised she wasn't on the toilet.
Yeah, that's usually
they're always on the toilet.
What happens. Yeah, shit and go. We get her on the floor, hook her up to the defibrillator, doing CPR, oxygen, the whole 9 yards. Paramedics come and they said, we got a pulse back. You guys did a great job. We leave the house at night, and she happened to be friends with one of our officers' wives, and my friend calls me up and says, hey, the lady lived. She's coming home from the hospital tomorrow. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. So the next shift we were working, I grab the two other guys that were with me. I was a sergeant at that point, and they were working on my squad. I grabbed them, I said, let's go over to her house, just to see how she's doing and show her that we care. We're happy you're here. So we go over to the house, and she came to the door, and her eyes welled up, and, our eyes welled up a little bit, and she thanked us and everything else. I was kind of, that's a proud moment. But now, here I am delivering pizza. I get a call, and it's a pretty big delivery, like it's going to be a party thing, I go to the house, and I'm looking at the house. I'm like, I know this residence. Go up, ring the doorbell. Who opens the door? The lady that we saved like 4 years before.
No kidding.
Actually, it was 6 years before.
Still alive.
Still alive.
Older woman, younger woman?
Well, she was 43.
She's 43.
So,
she kids?
Yeah.
So what you just did for her is you gave her kids an opportunity to spend a little bit more time with her.
She answers the door. She looks at me and she goes, get the fuck out of here. I know her name, so I'm not going to say it, but I said, wow. I said, how you doing? She goes, you're never going to believe this. Tonight, we're having a party to celebrate 6 years that you saved my life.
Wow.
And what's the chances of the cop that saved your life, or one of the cops that saved your life, delivering pizza to your house on a night you're celebrating her being?
No kidding.
That was deep. I just got back in my car, and I was like,
well, you made a difference.
It was almost like a setup. It wasn't really supposed to happen this way.
You look around for the camera.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I went on a call once where a mother was with her little kid, and she was going to commit suicide. The little kid's about 4 years old. So I sat there, and she wouldn't allow anybody to take the kid away. All the weapons were clear, but she wouldn't move. So I sat there, and I talked to this woman, and I talked to the kid. The kid's name was Mason. I'll never forget him for as long as I live. This is probably, it's probably 12, 13 years ago now. Now, mind you, after this incident, I would drive past the house. I'd see him outside. Hey, Mason, how you doing? Hey, Officer Kevin, how you doing? Little kid, very happy to see me. Always remembered my face. Now, I look a lot different right now than when I was an officer. I got a long beard. I look like Father Time. I look like somebody that you'd give money to out on the street.
No shave November is over.
The no shave 2021. So I'm in ShopRite, and I hear, hey, are you Officer Kevin? Little kid's like 10, 12 years old. You're older than that, probably. This kid, Mason, I didn't even recognize him because he'd grown up. Yeah. He remembered me.
That's crazy.
I went home with the best feeling because all of a sudden I made a difference in a kid's life. That's what we got into this job for. We didn't get into this job to get into shootings. They're unfortunate incidents, but we didn't get into this job for that.
Well, it's funny because I tell people all the time, you're one person. And people remember your face. You can go to a scene, let's just say it's a domestic, and there's a whole family there, and there's 10 people in a house or whatever it is. There's 10 different faces. You're the cop that showed up. You're one face. So they always remember your face. One of the things I do, like I'm an instructor in the Bergen County Police Academy. I've been doing it for about 15 years or so. Go up to 2 classes a year. I used to teach motor vehicle stops, crimes in progress, snipers, ambushes, assaults, a whole bunch of stuff like that. And I was a PT instructor, so I used to go running with the academy class all the time. There's 100 kids in each class. 2 classes a year, it's 200 kids, 15 years. I mean, you're talking a lot of, and they all have their head shaved, so I don't remember any of them. I'd be like down the shore or something like that. I was walking across the beach one day and I hear, "Hey, Lieutenant." I'm like, kid's like, "You remember me?" Now he's got longer hair. I didn't remember when you were in the academy, but you're that one face. Now when I go up to the academy, I go up twice a year. I'm really not that active in there anymore. I was out at a local establishment last night, and a guy walks in and he's looking at me, and he's got a shaved head, short crew cut type. He goes, "You look real familiar." What I do at the academy is I go up the night of motor vehicle stops. Me and the Rutherford officer that I was telling you that was standing on the other side of the car at the time of my incident, we were teaching motor vehicle stops together for years. So when I go up to the class now, every year, we set aside about an hour and we talk to all the recruits about what it's like to be involved in a shooting, what to expect.
That was the class that was missing in my academy.
Yeah.
That's how we change things. Because these new officers coming in, they got to deal with a bunch of different other issues than you and I had to deal with. But eventually that stuff's not going away.
Yeah.
There's going to be all sorts of different things, and it's going to be escalated. So we have to change that paradigm.
The feeling that I got when you're talking about what it's like to be involved in a shooting and to see their eyes, I mean, they're just riveted on you. You know, they're sitting on the edge of their seat listening to, when you're in the academy, it's like, oh, here comes another instructor. What's he going to talk about this time? They were all just like riveted on me. After we talked about the shooting and everything, a lot of them just come up and thank you. And that, again, to me, we're talking about proud moments. That's a proud moment. Like I was saying, I was out last night and a guy comes in and he says to me, he goes, "You look real familiar." So I said, well, tell him who I am and everything. He goes, "Weren't you a Lyndhurst cop?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm a West New York cop. I went to Bergen County Police Academy." He goes, "You told us a story about your shooting." He goes, "I just want to thank you." He goes, "I actually sat there and took notes about it." And he goes, "I still have those notes." And he goes, "I refer to them all the time." And one of the things that I try to get across to him is, in this business, complacency kills. My incident was 2:28 on a Tuesday morning. That's when some cops like to bed down, take a load off for a little while, catch up on reports, but you never know when things are going to happen. Like I tell them all the time, you go to that same alarm 10, 20 times a month. You get like that ABC corner store or whatever it is, and
it's that one
and
time.
the alarm goes off and they're like, "Oh, here's that alarm again." You always go like clockwork. You go pull on the door, check the windows. It's all secure. The one time you go and your complacency's down, that's the time that place is going to be getting robbed.
But do you understand that you had to go through this certain amount of suffering in your life, in your shooting? You could have sat there. You had every right to sit there and go, "Oh, man, my life's destroyed. It's ruined." But you were able to take that suffering and turn it into some sort of positive, which is what this suffering podcast is all about. It's about taking that suffering in, learning from it, rearranging it somehow, and giving it back out to the world in some sort of positive light and showing that you don't have to take this as a negative incident. You can grow from this stuff.
It's all about learning from someone else, generally someone else that's been through it, taking that information and making it your own.
Right.
I tell people all the time, what works for you may not work for me, but a portion of what worked for you may work for me.
Your recovery process, you're obviously in recovery. You're doing quite well. What's the biggest roadblock to your recovery now?
Today's climate, the way that they're treating police officers. If I ever hear of a police involved shooting, officer involved shooting, that just reverts me back to the day. You just start thinking, you start thinking about your incident, and like I said, it's a new normal. It's never ending. You try to put up a strong front, and like I said, I'm a quote guy, and one of the quotes were, "It's tough when you're strong because nobody sees you hurting."
Ah, yes.
Nobody knows what's going. You may put on the bravest front. People say that to me all the time.
You're three people. You're the person that others see you as, you're the person you see yourself as, and then there's the person you really are.
Yep.
So when you go behind that veil and nobody else is seeing you and you let loose, it's not what you always think it is.
You know, people always used to say to me all the time, "Oh, I was so afraid of you when you were a cop. You know, you're like an imposing. I'm 5'9", 185 pounds. How am I imposing?" It's the way you project yourself. It's your image. It's being squared away, looking neat in your uniform, making sure your shit is shined. You know, it's the way you project yourself. So I guess I always projected myself as, I don't want to say standoffish, but more unapproachable. You can approach me anytime you want. I don't want too many people approaching me. You know? So you put up that facade where, like, you go to ShopRite.
My wife tells me I'm unapproachable all the time.
You go to ShopRite and, you know, they know you're a cop and they're like, "Officer, can I talk to you for a minute?" "Yeah, I'm in at 3:00. Call me at 3:00. And listen, I'm willing to help anybody out, you know, but once you put up that facade or that wall around you, I guess it's just cop mentality. You know, I tell people all the time, they're like, "Oh, I was afraid to talk to you." And I could be the nicest guy in the world. I could be the biggest dick in the world too, but come talk to me. My daughter, when she started dating, the boys wouldn't come over to the house because they were all afraid of me.
Well, isn't that the point?
That was exactly the point.
Exactly.
And my daughter used to get so mad. "Daddy, no boys are coming over here to see me." I said, Good, go do your homework.
I always said if I ever had a daughter, thankfully I never had a daughter, I'd rub Crisco all over her face and make her the ugliest person possible just so the boys would stay away.
I had my daughter had braces and glasses. I tried to keep her as ugly for as long as I can.
Keep feeding her McDonald's.
Have another bite.
So if I was a young person getting into law enforcement now, what do you think a best piece of advice to give them would be?
Become a fireman.
Become a fireman. Talk to each other. Police talk about each other. But so Mike and I, just give you a little background. Mike and I are in group therapy together. Everybody talks about the brotherhood that is police. I'm going to lift the veil on that. There is no brotherhood in police because police, all they do is they're like crabs in a barrel. When one crab tries to get out, the others pull him back down. And that's not all cops. That's there's a small portion of them. But with the group therapy, we're all police officers. To me, that's real police brotherhood.
Yeah.
Because we're looking out for each other. You can say anything to each other, and it's going to be kept nice and close. And you're going to get some answers that you don't want.
Yeah. Well, you have to have thick skin.
Yes,
you have to have thick skin to be in this business. Like you said, between a dark humor and as much as I don't want to say, there's a lot of backstabbing that goes on in this business.
It's a competitive job market, so
especially with promotions and stuff like that. You know, one of the old sayings was, "When you see a man in blue, fuck him before he fucks you." You know, and
well, whenever somebody gets stripes, I always say, "How much were your knee pads?"
Yeah, exactly. Did you take those stripes off of your knee pads?
Yeah. The advice I give people, because people will from time to time come up to me and say, "Hey, I think my son's looking to become a cop." The one piece of advice I give them is, you're going to train your body to get through the academy, but you got to train your mind. You have to become mentally strong. And some people aren't cut out to have that mental strength. Maybe I wasn't. I don't know. No. It's too late now.
I would never steer anybody away from law enforcement. I loved it. I mean, I loved every minute of it. Like I said, I was proud just to put the uniform on. I took 8 sick days in 20 years. I was one of the dedicated guys. I brought, we were issued our portable radios. I brought my portable radio home every night and always had it near me. And if I heard something going off or an officer needs something, I'd jump in my car, grab my gun, grab my vest. I'd go out.
If you could, would you go back?
Would love to. My whole thing is, it's not only the incident itself that really got to me. One of the things that bothers me most is I got beat up by the system. Like I said, it was a carjacked vehicle. Came out
post-shooting.
Post-shooting.
Yeah.
The whole investigation of it.
Right. I know you had some issues with getting your name released into the press.
Yeah, well, that's another whole issue.
Yeah, that's a whole other podcast. That was an awful thing, man.
Yeah. Case law now too.
Right.
We could touch on that if you want to. I got no problem with it. But the investigation into it was, like I said, carjacked vehicle came at me at 90 miles an hour. If he hit me, he would have killed me right there. Stolen gun in the car. He had ski masks in the car. They were trying to break into cars. He was high on weed and bath salts. Everybody coming up to me at the scene. It's a great shoot. You got nothing to worry about. You did it. You're a hero. And hero I don't like either because someone died. I don't like to be called a hero. I was doing my job.
That's one of those things, almost like when you're going through retirement and say, "Oh, don't worry about it. It was a good shoot." You're a shoo-in for retirement. People can tell you that. They told it to me all the time. But until you go in front of that board and say that you are, you never ever believe it. So they could tell you a good shoot. Yeah. It's a good shoot all day. But
they told me it was a good shoot, but we have to present it to grand jury. Well, if it was a good shoot. Needless to say, the state trooper wound up firing that night, so the attorney general's office took over the investigation. The shooting happened early morning, September 16th. The 17th, talked to our attorney. I think we went and met with our attorney, PBA attorney.
So that's something people don't realize about police. When you're involved in a shooting, and people think that police out there getting involved in shootings all the time because they watch too much TV, the minute you get into a shooting, you got to get an attorney.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're going to end up in jail.
Yeah, no kidding.
And now with
no joke.
The current climate, and this is another thing I would tell somebody looking to become an officer. The current climate is, oh, you got to shoot him in the leg. I actually had somebody tell me that. Why can't they shoot him in the leg?
Shoot him in the hand.
And I had to educate them to say, if I have the forethought and the ability to shoot somebody in the leg, I'm going to jail.
Yeah.
Because that means I shouldn't have been shooting them.
Yeah. Generally, you're taught that your bullet is going where your eyes are going. And like I said, I was staring this guy right in the face. So that's where my bullet went. But just referring back to the investigation, after everybody told me it was a good shoot, we went, talked to our attorney. The next day we had to go to state police, give our statement. And then they said, okay, we'll be in touch with you. It took 53 weeks to get to grand jury. I had a murder indictment hanging over my head for 53 weeks for doing my job. Absolutely ripped me apart. I felt so betrayed by I don't even want to call it a business, but I felt so betrayed by the profession that I chose and the profession that I loved and the profession that I put my life on the line for every day, not just that night, every day. It took 53 weeks to get to grand jury, and we had no contact with the Attorney General's office whatsoever.
That's how broken this is.
They don't call you and tell you, here's what's going on. Now you start second guessing yourself. Did I do something wrong? Did I say something wrong in my statement? The attorneys, they're like, no, you did good. You're attorney. Call your attorney. Oh, you did good. Don't worry about it. You got nothing to worry about. Well, if I got nothing to worry about, what's taking so long? I lost 20 pounds in a year from the stress.
So now you're dealing with the PTSD and you're dealing with this stress going through grand jury indictment. Yeah. And then once that's over, then you're dealing with the stress of retirement.
Yeah, exactly. That's a whole nother ball of wax right there.
So think about all that stuff encompassing you. Was there ever a time that you sat down, and I know this is going to be hard for you to say, that you sat down and said, this is it, man. I can't go on anymore.
Yeah. It was during the course of the Attorney General's investigation. And there are a lot of different things too. Like I lived right in Lyndhurst. The night of the shooting, my kids were still in school. The night of the shooting, my then wife, I called her right after because I know Lyndhurst is a small town and the grapevine is just terrible. I always know that they teach you in the police academy, if you're ever involved in a shooting, you have to go to the hospital that night. So I figured someone was going to call my family and say, Mike's been involved in a shooting and he's in the hospital.
That's why I had to call I said it in, I don't know if you listened to my shooting episode. It's the first thing I had to grab somebody's phone because my phone was in the car. I never carried my phone with me at that time. And that's the first thing I thought of. Somebody's going to call my wife and say there was a shooting. Kevin's going to the hospital. Yeah. Holy shit. How do you do that?
So I called her. I think it was like 7 minutes after the incident. So I called the house phone. She answers the house phone. I said, listen, I just want to let you know I was involved in a shooting. I'm okay. She said, I'll be right up there. I said, no, there's no reason for you to come up here. She calls her sister who lives on our block. All of a sudden I had a family gathering at the scene. Get out of here. I said, do me a favor. Go home and tell the kids. I said, go home and tell the kids. They know I was working last night. They're going to go to school today. And they're going to know there was a police-involved shooting last night because it's all over town already. And they're going to see that I'm not home. Tell them, yes, I was involved. I'm okay. We're just going through the investigation. Tell them whatever you want. So she winds up leaving. They take us up to the hospital. We go back to the scene. We have our own command post. So I'm sitting in the most eerie thing. I'm sitting in the command post. Now I'm in civilian clothes. because they took our uniforms from us there, for all the evidence of the tire burn on the uniform and all that. So I'm in my civilian clothes, and I'm just sitting there. News helicopters overhead. News reporters over here. I see like Tracy Strahan from like Channel 4 News or whatever. Like, that's Tracy Strahan, This is pretty. And then it hit me. I'm like, they're all here for what I did. They're here for me. I want to go outside and like start giving interviews, like, because you're going to get the story wrong. Every news feed gets a story wrong. Here's what actually happened. That's one thing that bothered me is all the I don't want to say false allegations, just the misled stories that were out there about the shooting. They made us seem like some rogue cops that just started firing at people for no reason. There was a reason behind it.
Because that's where the story
exactly. is. That's how the media spins it.
You've used your suffering in such a positive way. And I know it wasn't positive when you first started out, but it sounds like you're really on the right track now. It sounds like your head's a little bit clearer. You're giving back to others. You're learning. You're remembering the good things about being a police officer, which I'm sure during the darkest of times, they weren't there.
No, absolutely not.
So that's part of that recovery process. And that's part of that stuff where I wanted to have you in today. So what's next for you?
Hopefully tomorrow.
Tomorrow? The one day at a
I
time?
live it day by day.
That's good. If you had a crystal ball and you're able to look into the future 10, 20 years, do you think you're still going to be telling this story?
I hope to be.
Yeah.
If I could help one person out, it's all worth it to me.
Well, that's the message right there.
Yeah.
So in conclusion, I just want to throw out a couple different numbers because I think that this is important. There's an organization that helped me. It benefited me more than I can ever tell them. And it's Cop to Cop. Cop to Cop is for law enforcement officers. And the number is 1-866-COP-2-COP or 267-2267. They're a wonderful organization. You're speaking to people who are familiar, or you're speaking to retired police officers. They know it. You're not alone. You're never alone. The second, I'd like to give, it's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and that's 1-800-273-8255. So let's talk about all the stuff that we learned today. If you were able to overcome that trauma and that adversity, you can use your newfound strength to build a better you. You are definitely not alone. If you ever have a problem, just reach out to me on social media. I'll call you. Leave me your phone number. But most importantly, and I think this is what I get from you, is you got to pay it forward. You got to pay it forward. Mike, I can't thank you enough for being here. You're my brother. You're my friend.
Kev, before we go, I just want to say thank you for this podcast. But more importantly, thank you for being the person you are. When we started going to group meetings together, you were one of the first people I met. You were instrumental in my recovery. I knew you've been through it before. And that's the hardest thing. People come up to you all the time and say, I know what you're going through. You don't know what I'm going through. Unless you've been through that, you don't know what I'm going through. You were one of the people that I had to lean on back then, and I truly appreciate it. One other thing I want to get out there, and I get nothing out of this. There's a book out there. It's called Shots Fired. The author's name is Joe Laughlin. He's a retired deputy chief, I believe, in Portland, Maine. He interviews all cops that goes through, just like we're doing now, goes through their shooting incident, and he gets their feelings about, what it's like to be involved in it and everything else. Could you get some crazy thoughts in your head when you go through these things? And I was wondering, am I crazy? Why am I thinking like this? What's making me think like this? When you read that book, and like I said, I get nothing out of it, you start seeing that other people are feeling the same way you are. And it all starts coming together. I always said, I believe that book should be in every police academy. I think every recruit should read that book, just in case they get involved in a shooting.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link to that book in our show notes. If I get sued, so be it.
Listen, I know the guy who wrote it. I was so impressed by the book. I looked up the author of it. I found out where he was working and everything else. I actually called him.
What's his name?
Joe Laughlin.
Joe Laughlin?
Loughlin.
Good Irishman. I like that.
I actually got on the phone with him. I could give you his phone number and everything. Fantastic guy. And again, like I said, there are certain people I have to thank. You're one of the people I have to thank. Joe Laughlin for his book. My chief of police, Chief O'Connor, at the time of the incident, was a phone call away.
I always say, don't thank me, pay it forward. And that's going to bring us to the end of the Suffering Podcast. Check us out on social media. Thank you, Mike Failace, for coming in here today, telling your story. I know it was difficult for you. You did an awesome job. And I know you don't like this word, but you're a hero to me, and you're a hero to the other officers around the country. So everybody, have a great time. Pay it forward. I love you all. Thank you so much for listening to the Suffering Podcast. And that's going to do it for this episode. Don't forget to go to popple.com, put in the code TSP20 for a 20% discount on your digital business card. Follow us on all social media. That's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, OnlyFans. Follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson, of course. Follow the Suffering Podcast, and we're going to see you on the next episode.